Hi, my name is Heather McLean, and this is the Alliance Against Northern Pass. Today I'm going to be interviewing Jack Savage from the Society of the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, otherwise known as the Forest Society here in Concord. And they have some news to share today in their blocking actions against the Northern Pass project. And so far they've let out a press release that's stating that they have closed on 2 further properties that will block the intended route for the Northern Pass, and we're going to have Jack explain that to us.
Sure, thanks Heather. Thanks for coming down here today. Yeah, we closed yesterday on more than 1,000 acres of conservation easements intended to block Northern Pass's proposed route through northern Coos County. It's been our strategy right from the start to stop them from being able to put together a viable route in order to compel them to look at the other viable alternatives. And as I think you know, it's been shown that burying the line along transportation corridors through New Hampshire is one viable option, or using an existing high voltage transmission corridor that goes from the same place in Canada down to Massachusetts. It's a little bit crazy to think you have to build a second one.
So that would be National Grid?
That's National Grid's corridor, correct. So as I think many people know, we announced last August that we had come to agreements with 4 landowners to put conservation easements on land that interrupted their proposed route. We've been tracking where Northern Pass has acquired land, and while they haven't announced a route, where they intend to go is quite clear based on where they've purchased land. It's really no mystery at all, and we put out maps showing that. And so yesterday, having successfully raised more than $1.5 million from, get this, more than 2,000 donors. This is really the remarkable part of this story. This is a project with broader support than any in Forest Society history.
Yes.
We've had, when we protected the Balsams landscape a little over a year ago, that was more than 1,700 donors. But in the last 2 weeks alone, we've received over 700 donations. They're just pouring in. It's fabulous to see, and it makes us feel good about the fact that we're on the right side of this thing. This is what people want, is to not have the landscape decimated by up more than 1,100 towers across 180 miles of landscape. And we think the best strategy is to stop them from being able to acquire the rights of way they need, and that's what these conservation easements are about. I have to say that the landowners we've been working with are, in my mind, true heroes. They haven't left millions of dollars on the table.
Yes.
They're receiving some proceeds in exchange for these permanent, perpetual conservation easements. They are forever giving up certain development rights on their properties, and they're being compensated in that. But compared to what that they could get if they listen to Northern Pass, and in both cases they have been approached by Northern Pass and been offered huge amounts of money, and in both cases they said no. And we offered them an alternative, and we closed on those easements just yesterday.
I think that's very commendable, and I want to just help the audience understand the Forest Society's role in this and why you're doing this, because I think people need to feel that connection, that you guys have been around since 1901.
That's right.
So it's 112 years, and that you are basically stewards of the forest in a sense, and trying to maintain a sense of beauty and natural surroundings. So you have basically, as you've stated, an ethical obligation to protect existing conservation lands and the integrity of the forest.
That's right. I haven't been around since 1901, although sometimes I look like it. We were founded 112 years ago to help with the effort to enable the creation of the White Mountain National Forest.
There you go. So this is important.
It is incredibly important, and this proposal is essentially for commercial development through the White Mountain National Forest, as well as dozens of other already conserved lands. And as a land trust, we have a legal obligation to protect those existing conserved lands. This proposed line would go through the Rocks Estate in Bethlehem. This proposed land would directly impact the Washburn Family Forest up in Clarksville. This proposed project, based on their intended route, would impact the Kaufman Forest in Stark, and any number of lands owned by the state, local communities, other land trusts, and so forth. And so, even if we were somehow in favor of this project, we would still be compelled legally to protect these existing lands. And so from our standpoint, there is a viable way to transmit energy from Canada to southern New England, if that seems to be like a reasonable idea. And so we are working to compel that to happen.
And also, to be clear, you're not stopping the project. A lot of people think, oh, they're out to, you know, smash this project into the ground, but that's a very difficult thing to do. You're actually compelling them to be responsible in the way that they do this project, so that they would bury the line, which would give the state benefit. The state would get benefit, not just PSNH on their right-of-way.
Well, I think we have come to believe that if Hydro-Quebec wants to export energy to southern New England market, they need to pay to do it in a responsible way and not sacrifice the New Hampshire landscape for their own profit and for Northeast Utilities' profit. I think that's the fundamental proposition. But you're right, we are not, in theory, against the possibility of seeing Canadian hydropower delivered to southern New England. What we're about, and we think we're right about, is protecting New Hampshire's landscape from corporate profiteering, which is essentially what it is. That said, I think what we made 2 years ago and a year and a half ago, we made repeated entreaties to Northeast Utilities, PSNH, and Hydro-Quebec to sit down with a group of people and look to see if there was a way to find some compromise. And they steadfastly refused to even open up the discussion.
Really?
And consequently, we came to the conclusion that the only way to get them to look at possible alternatives is to stop what they're proposing to do overhead. And we think we have made a lot of progress in doing exactly that.
I want to stress how, it's like how proud I am of you guys. I really have to say that you guys have really been a huge champion in this cause in bringing awareness and also walking your talk, because you know, you're out there, you're investigating all of the lands that they are and figuring out their entire plot, where they want to go, what's been bought so far, and then executing these moves that are like a chess game.
They are a little bit like a chess game.
And that's very bold.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the organization, thank you. But really, the success that we've had so far is really a result of the broad opposition to this. Not only have we opposed this, the Appalachian Mountain Club has opposed this project, Conservation Law Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, Conservation New Hampshire, the list of existing organizations that care deeply about New Hampshire's landscape, about New Hampshire's tourism industry, about New Hampshire forests, is quite long. And then there have been any number of groups like yours, the Alliance Against Northern Pass and REAL and so forth, that have grown up as a true grassroots movement to oppose this. This is not really about the Forest Society. This is about New Hampshire trying to choose for itself what it wants. This is about 31 communities along the proposed line standing up and saying, no, this is not what we want. We don't care about your purported tax benefits. We don't care about these phantom jobs. What we want is what we have today, and we ought to have a choice to have that.
That's right. And thank you for acknowledging all the other conservation groups and all the other groups involved in this fight. And I think that who from, was it somebody from Northeast Utilities that said basically they had the approval of all the
Oh, that was, yeah, that was Northeast Utilities.
Oh, wait a minute. There are that, not everybody is for the Northern Pass. That was a really good statement. Okay, so moving on from there, I just wanted to bring that out for the people to understand, and the fact that, again, over 2,000 donors from 223 towns of the 234 out of, and 29 states have gifted you to help with this cause.
That's right. Yeah.
That's huge.
Right. We even got a gift from someone who had sold to Northern Pass.
Ooh.
Now, it was only 1 Canadian penny, but it was nonetheless.
Actually, that's pretty funny.
It is funny.
Okay, so
At least they have a sense of humor.
Is that
yeah,
like,
that's pretty funny.
is that like, ha ha, gotcha
Yeah,
type of
something
thing?
like that, maybe. So now, there's still more work for the Forest Society to do, and you have 300 acres coming up in the North Country in Coos County again. You want to talk about that?
Well, right. So back in August, we announced that we had agreements with 4 different landowners, and we needed to raise a certain amount of money in order to execute those agreements. In December, we closed on 500 acres owned by Green Acre Woodlands. Just yesterday, we closed on over 1,000 acres owned by Mr. McAllister and Lynn Placey, 3 separate parcels actually.
Okay.
And then later, this winter or spring, we intend to close on another 300 acres in Columbia, owned by the Lewis family, that will seal off another potential route should they attempt to go around their intended route. Regardless, they're going to have to give up tens of millions of dollars of acquisitions, which have been rendered useless based on these blocking actions. We're also talking to at least 8 other landowners at this point,
Okay.
about giving us the opportunity to put easements on properties that will permanently seal off any opportunity they have to get through Coos County. Our concern is not just today. Our concern is looking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years down the road, where as land changes hands over time, they might be able to punch through. And it's not only for this one line, but we're concerned that they will look to industrialize the landscape. As anyone who's traveled to Montreal
Yes.
knows and sees the lineup of transmission lines and towers.
Huge.
It's just an incredibly industrialized landscape. We don't want that in New Hampshire.
Right.
That's the threat, that's the fear. And so we need to permanently protect. And these conservation easements that we're acquiring are perpetual, meaning that they run with the land and they cannot be reversed. And so whoever owns the land in the future will, the land will be subject to these protections.
Okay. Well, I think that's awesome.
If you want to look, zoom in on the map here for a second, I'll show you.
We can do that. You want to start up here?
Sure, yeah. There's a number of blocks at this point. You know, the properties we closed on are just yesterday are here in Stewartstown, and this is their intended route. They haven't acknowledged this, but they bought land all along here, and so it's very clear that that's where they want to go. This was the route they drew on a line.
Yeah.
Drew on a map 2 years ago.
I remember that.
And they realized that that was not going to be something that they could make happen. And the big difference now is that eminent domain has been taken off the table. So that where a conservation easement might not have withstood the use of eminent domain, with eminent domain off the table for this private commercial project, these conservation easements will stand the test. So there's that block here. Up here, George, you can see that our Washburn family forest is a strip of land that prevents them from even getting over this direction. And then in they bought some land early on over here south of the Balsams and north of the Nass Stream State Forest. And we've come to an agreement with the Lewis family to put an easement to prevent them from getting through here. So as we cocoon this entry point to the east of New Hampshire, and they look south to other land they bought, we're protecting that. The other thing I might look at if you would go all the way down through the 180 miles of proposed line. This is really an amazing thing.
Over 1,000 towers?
Every 800 feet for this entire length through the White Mountain National Forest, all these green areas which are existing conserved lands. Our Rocks Estate in Bethlehem is right here.
Yep.
So if you come down, one of the challenges they have is to get through Concord.
Okay.
And there is existing right-of-way through Concord. The problem with it for them is that it passes very near the Concord airport. And when you're putting up 140-foot towers, that's a problem because you've got planes coming in and out. And so they have to work with the FAA. Their preferred route, as on their website, is in fact to go around a bit and go up into Chichester. However, a while back, we had a person put a conservation easement on land that directly blocks their preferred route around Concord. And without eminent domain, that option for them is taken off the table.
Okay.
And so does it stop them absolutely going through Concord? No, but it raises the bar. Now they must have that that permission from the FAA. They've got to widen certain rights-of-ways. They have to make some more deals with different landowners in order to get through. We're narrowing their options. We're making it more difficult. And, you know, hopefully Hydro-Quebec is watching all this and coming to understand that if they want to transmit energy sometime in the next 50 years, they're going to have to get their shovels out and start digging along New Hampshire highways.
I think that is, okay, so you've set up so many blocks and yet they appear to persist.
Sure, because that's what you do. You know, at this point, Northeast Utilities have a project conceived very specifically, and so they will continue to attempt to go forward, and they may announce a route which will be disputed. They may file an application to the SEC. They may restart their presidential permit application. They will continue to pursue a special use permit through the White Mountain National Forest. They may continue to talk to the FAA about trying to get around the airport. But at every stage, this option is clearly less and less and less and less viable. And quite frankly, even if they got other permits, if they don't have the right-of-way to get through our conservation easements, then they can't do it.
Yeah, now how can they legally say they have a route if they don't have a route?
They can say whatever they want.
They can. So
There's nothing to stop them from saying whatever they
and
want.
would that be to just create a perception that everything's fine for the investors?
Well, I think it is true to a certain extent that they are paying attention to what Wall Street thinks and knows. That's clear from what they say to analysts when their quarterly earnings calls. And I think they're also very mindful of the relationship with Hydro-Quebec. They want that key partner to believe that they're making progress. And so much of what they do is meant to create the impression that they're making progress,
so it's,
even
yeah.
as they're losing ground
Okay.
in terms of the ultimate viability of the project.
You know, I have a question. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I don't know if you know the answer, but do you know if the Northern Pass is being drawn from a currently built dam or from a new project?
Well, that's a great question, and one that a study that the New England Power Generators Association tried to address. You know, how much so-called excess power does Hydro-Quebec have, and could it in fact deliver 1,200 megawatts of hydropower to New England, or would it have to be some other power? There's nothing about this transmission line that guarantees that any of the power that would be delivered, if it were ever built, would in fact be hydropower. It's a line to deliver electricity. It's, I mean, that's one of the great falsehoods about this project, that not only is it not guaranteed necessarily to be hydropower, it's a bi-directional line, so that power can go either way. So there's no guarantees there's going to be a reduction in carbon, there's no guarantees there will be hydropower, there's no power coming to New Hampshire. There's any number of reasons this project is bad from a New Hampshire perspective.
So it's almost a lie to say it's clean and green and that it's pure hydropower?
Well, I wouldn't use that word, but I would challenge those assertions.
Okay.
To the extent that Northern Pass is being sold, being marketed based on this clean energy that has taxes and
Right.
jobs, none of those things is necessarily true.
Okay.
And New Hampshire should make a decision about a project like this based on what it is, not what it purports to be. What's interesting is that one study suggests that in order for Hydro-Quebec today to deliver 1,200 megawatts of hydropower throughout the year to southern New England, they would need to divert power that they currently transmit to Ontario. And then Ontario, in response, has a capacity to fire up natural gas plants, which is the cheapest option you would have in any case. And that the result would be no net reduction in fossil fuel generated electricity. And to the extent that this project is being sold based on net reduction in carbon, it sort of puts the lie to that.
Okay, so I feel like I'm being sold a bill of goods.
I think that there's some truth to that.
There was another question I had too about the Northern Pass and basically the fact that they want to build this project that's for profit. Now, the rules have changed since there's been a deregulation, right, of these projects, so that now we can have these for-profit projects. Like most of the electric transmission projects in the past were to keep the lights on. Well,
I'm not sure that I'm the right person to talk to about those kind of things, because I'm not an electricity expert. We've learned a lot over the last 2 years at the Forest Society about some of these issues, and we feel like we have enough of an understanding to know that this is elective.
Yep.
It's not needed in order to keep the lights on. No entity, ISO New England nor anyone else has said we got to have this power. This is something that Northeast Utilities, PSNH, and Hydro-Quebec want to do. It's a commercial proposal. That doesn't in itself make it bad. We have commercial proposals all the time for things we need, housing and so forth. The issue is here how they propose to do it.
Right.
If a developer came into a planning board and said, we want to put up these great affordable houses, the only thing is that we don't want to provide drainage or actually build any roads. The planning board would say, no way, you can't do that. You need to build the infrastructure necessary and not leave the town with a mess on your hands. And what Northern Pass represents is a developer coming in and saying, well, we want to do this good thing. We want to transmit this power that could be cheap and might be renewable to New England, but we want to do it the cheapest and easiest way possible.
Right,
we
there
want
you
to
go.
ruin your landscape along the way, and we want to leave you with a mess. And the answer should be no. If you want to do that, if you want to have your commercial project, that's fine, but you got to do it in a responsible way.
Okay, well, that being said, we need to kind of wrap up, and I want to again mention that again we have these blocking actions, and that two of your blocking actions were actually closed on yesterday.
That's correct.
Okay, and if you would like to donate to the Northern Pass Initiative, then Jack can give you the information on where you can go for that.
Just go to our website, www.forestsociety.org. Right on the home page you can see a link to click, or if you do forestsociety.org/NP, it'll take you right to the page. It'll tell you about the project and tell you how you can donate. We appreciate every donation, large and small.
Thank you.
Even
And
a Canadian penny.
there you go. And we're Northern Pass, nonorthernpass.org, the Alliance Against Northern Pass, and stay tuned for more on this saga. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that should do it. Did I sound, should I do it again?
No, we're going to play it.
Because I think I was kind of like... Hi. We were in the Forest Society building in Concord, and I was interviewing Jack Savage when we had some technical difficulties, and our last parting comments were not recorded on our video camera. So I would like to say to anybody who's watching, if you would like to donate to the Forest Society and help with their blocking campaign against the Northern Pass, you can go to forestsociety.org, and they have a Northern Pass initiative. You can click on that and donate directly online. Our website is nonorthernpass.org, and you can click on our website and check out what we do there. And I want to thank again Jack Savage and the entire Forest Society for doing all the work that they do. Had they not been doing this initiative, I believe that the Northern Pass would have a route right now. And they're probably the only reason that the Northern Pass does not have a route. So feel free to donate to them and call them and say hello, say you're doing a great job. And also call the senators in the State House and all of the representatives and let them know how you feel about the Northern Pass. Thank you. We'll see you soon.